Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the readings on the quantum containment unit. For the third time that hour, something felt wrong in the laboratory today. The exotic matter samples they had collected from the dead star system were acting strange. The energy readings kept jumping up and down like a crazy heartbeat. He looked across the lab at Lyra, the young Zephyrian scientist who had become his research partner over the past 6 months. She was beautiful in an alien way that still amazed him. Her skin looked like it was made of living crystal that changed colors when she moved. Right now it was a soft blue, which Marcus had learned meant she was focused and happy with her work. The Zephyrians were much smaller than humans and looked fragile. But they were the smartest beings Marcus had ever met. Lyra could do math in her head that would make human computers cry. She had been working on understanding the quantum samples for weeks without taking a real break. "Marcus," Lyra called out in her musical voice. Even when she spoke human language, it sounded like singing. "The containment field is showing some unusual patterns. Could you check the backup systems?" Marcus nodded and walked over to the control panel. The Harmony was humanity's newest research ship, built to work with alien scientists from 12 different species. The ship was huge, almost like a flying city, with different sections designed for different types of beings. The quantum lab was in the middle of the ship, surrounded by the strongest shields they could build. As Marcus pulled up the backup system readings, he felt his stomach drop. The numbers were all wrong. The containment field was losing power much faster than it should. The exotic matter inside was pushing against the barriers like a wild animal trying to escape from a cage. "Lyra, we need to evacuate the lab right now," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice calm. He had seen what happened when exotic matter broke free. It could tear holes in reality itself. Lyra looked up from her workstation. Her crystal skin turned yellow, which meant she was confused. "But the readings show we still have 40 minutes before any danger level is reached." Marcus shook his head as he watched the numbers on his screen. "Your equipment is reading the old data. The backup systems are showing something completely different. The containment is failing now." He hit the emergency alert button and red lights started flashing throughout the lab. The computer's voice echoed through the room. "Containment breach warning. All personnel evacuate immediately." Lyra started gathering her research notes, but Marcus grabbed her arm gently. "Leave everything. We need to go now." They ran toward the exit, but Marcus could hear a deep humming sound growing louder behind them. The exotic matter was starting to break free. He pushed Lyra ahead of him as they reached the doorway. That was when everything went wrong at once. The containment unit exploded in a burst of impossible light. Marcus turned around and saw reality itself breaking apart like glass. Cracks appeared in the air, and through them he could see into other dimensions, other times, other possibilities. The quantum fragments were spreading out like deadly fireworks, each piece capable of destroying anything it touched. Marcus saw Lyra stumble at the doorway. She had looked back at the explosion and frozen in terror. The Zephyrians were not good with sudden danger. Their minds were too complex, too thoughtful. In emergencies, they often just stopped moving while they tried to understand what was happening. One of the largest quantum fragments was heading straight for her. It moved slowly, like it was floating through thick water, but Marcus knew that was just how human eyes saw it. In reality, it was moving faster than light, bending space and time around itself. Marcus did not think about what he was doing. He did not consider the odds or make a plan. He just ran. He threw himself between Lyra and the quantum fragment, spreading his arms wide to cover as much of her as possible. The fragment hit him in the chest like a burning spear made of broken stars. The pain was beyond anything he had ever felt. It was not just his body being hurt. The fragment was tearing apart the basic pieces of what made him Marcus Chen. He could feel his memories scattering, his thoughts breaking into pieces, his very existence coming apart. But he held on. He kept himself between Lyra and the other fragments that were still flying around the room. Each one that hit him felt like dying and being born at the same time. His vision started to fade, but he could still see Lyra behind him, safe in his shadow. More fragments hit him. His legs stopped working and he fell to his knees, but he kept his arms spread wide. He could taste blood in his mouth, but it tasted wrong, like it was not quite his blood anymore. Through the pain and the fading light, he heard Lyra screaming his name. Her voice had changed. It was not musical anymore. It was raw and desperate and full of an emotion he had never heard from a Zephyrian before. The last thing Marcus saw before everything went black was Lyra's face. Her crystal skin was flashing through colors he had never seen before, cycling rapidly between what looked like panic, grief, and something else, something that looked almost like love. He tried to smile at her to let her know it was okay, that he would do it again, but his face was not working anymore. The quantum fragments had changed too much of him. As consciousness slipped away, Marcus felt strangely peaceful. He had saved her. Whatever happened to him now did not matter. Lyra was alive, and that made everything worth it. The explosion continued to tear through the laboratory, destroying millions of credits worth of equipment and research. Emergency teams rushed toward the scene. But they were too late to prevent the disaster. They were not too late to find two bodies in the wreckage. One was a young Zephyrian female, unconscious but completely unharmed. She was curled up in a small space that had somehow been protected from all the destruction around it. The other was a human male, barely alive, his body torn apart by forces that should have killed him instantly. The quantum fragments were still embedded in his flesh, glowing softly like strange jewels. The medical team could not understand how he was still breathing. As they carried Marcus away on a stretcher, Lyra finally woke up. She saw his broken body and let out a sound that no Zephyrian had ever made before. It was a cry of pure anguish that echoed through the ship and made every human who heard it stop what they were doing. She tried to follow the medical team, but her legs gave out. She had never felt emotions this strong before. Her people were not built for this kind of pain. As she collapsed to the floor, her crystal skin turned black for the first time in her life. The last thing she saw before fainting was Marcus's hand hanging off the side of the stretcher, still glowing faintly with quantum energy. Even unconscious and dying, he had been changed by what he had done. He had given up his humanity to save her. Now the question was whether anyone could save him. Marcus woke up slowly, like swimming up from the bottom of a deep, dark ocean. At first he could not tell if his eyes were open or closed. Everything around him glowed with a soft, warm light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. He tried to move his hand, and was surprised when it actually worked. The last thing he remembered was burning pain and the feeling of his body falling apart. He had expected to wake up dead, if that made any sense. The room he was in looked like nothing he had ever seen before. The walls curved and flowed like they were alive, pulsing gently with colors that shifted from blue to green to gold. Strange machines surrounded his bed, but they did not look like machines. They looked more like metal plants or electronic coral reefs. Marcus tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. His whole body felt wrong, like he was wearing clothes that did not fit properly. When he looked down at his hands, he could see thin lines of light running under his skin, following his veins and nerves. "Please do not try to move too quickly," said a voice that sounded like it was coming from everywhere at once. "Your body is still adjusting to the changes." Marcus turned his head carefully and saw something that made him wonder if he was still dreaming. A creature that looked like a cross between a spider and a tree was standing next to his bed. It had 8 long arms that moved independently, and its skin looked like bark covered in glowing moss. "I am Dr. Veltar," the creature said. Its voice came from somewhere in its chest, and Marcus could see the light under its bark skin pulse when it spoke. "I have been taking care of you for the past 3 weeks." 3 weeks? Marcus's voice came out as a croak. "Where am I? What happened to the ship? Is Lyra okay?" Dr. Veltar moved closer, and Marcus could see that what he had thought was moss was actually tiny lights that showed the creature's thoughts and emotions. Right now they were pulsing in what looked like a pattern of relief and concern. "The young Zephyrian is perfectly safe," Dr. Veltar said. "She has been here every day waiting for you to wake up. As for where you are..." The creature paused, and the lights under its skin changed to a pattern Marcus could not read. "You are at the Nexus. It is a medical facility that officially does not exist." Marcus tried to process this information, but his head still felt fuzzy. "I do not understand. What do you mean it does not exist?" Before Dr. Veltar could answer, Marcus heard a sound that made his heart jump. It was Lyra's voice, but he had never heard her sound so excited before. "Marcus, you are awake!" She rushed into the room, and Marcus was amazed to see that she looked completely normal. Her crystal skin was its usual shifting blue color, and she moved with the same graceful steps he remembered. When she reached his bed, she stopped suddenly, like she wanted to hug him but was not sure if she should. "I thought you were going to die," she said quietly. Her skin turned purple, which Marcus had learned meant she was feeling very strong emotions. The doctor said no one had ever survived that much quantum damage before. Marcus looked back and forth between Lyra and Dr. Veltar. Someone needs to explain what is going on. Where exactly are we and how did I get here? Dr. Veltar's lights shifted to what Marcus was starting to think might be amusement. Perhaps it would be better if you saw for yourself. Are you strong enough to walk? Marcus tested his legs carefully. They felt strange, like they were buzzing with energy, but they worked. Dr. Veltar helped him stand up, and Lyra stayed close to his other side in case he fell. They walked through corridors that looked like they were grown rather than built. The walls were smooth and organic, and Marcus could see other rooms through openings that sealed themselves automatically as they passed. In those rooms, he caught glimpses of beings he had never seen before and could barely understand. In one room, a creature made of what looked like living electricity was being treated by doctors who wore special suits. In another, something that might have been a sentient gas cloud was contained in a complex series of magnetic fields. The Nexus treats beings from across the galaxy, Dr. Veltar explained as they walked. We specialize in cases that normal medicine cannot handle. Beings who have been changed by forces beyond current understanding. They reached a large window that looked out into space, and Marcus gasped. Outside, he could see dozens of ships from species he recognized and many more that he did not. The space station itself was enormous, built in sections that clearly came from different civilizations. This is the headquarters of the Galactic Preservation Coalition, Dr. Veltar continued. We are a secret organization that works to protect individuals who are important to the future of galactic civilization. Marcus stared out at the impossible sight. And you think I am important? Marcus, Lyra said softly, what you did was broadcast across 17 star systems. The way you threw yourself in front of those quantum fragments to save me, no one had ever seen anything like it. Dr. Veltar's lights pulsed in agreement. In most galactic civilizations, self-preservation is the strongest instinct. Beings will sacrifice others to save themselves without thinking twice about it. But humans, the creature paused. Humans are different. You regularly risk your lives for others, even for strangers, even for aliens you barely know. Marcus felt overwhelmed. I just did what anyone would do. No, Dr. Veltar said firmly. You did what a human would do, and that is why you are here. They continued walking, and Dr. Veltar showed Marcus more of the station. There were libraries filled with the knowledge of 100 species, laboratories where scientists worked on problems that could affect entire civilizations, and meeting rooms where beings from across the galaxy planned for the future. The Coalition has been watching humanity for decades, Dr. Veltar explained. Your species shows behavioral patterns that we have never encountered before. You form emotional bonds with beings that are completely different from you. You sacrifice for abstract concepts like justice and freedom. You put the needs of others ahead of your own survival. Marcus stopped walking. That does not sound very special. It just sounds normal. Lyra touched his arm gently. Marcus, in my species, we barely understand emotions. We are logical and intelligent, but we do not feel things the way you do. When you saved me, I felt something I had never experienced before. It was like suddenly understanding a new type of mathematics. Dr. Veltar's lights shifted to a warm golden pattern. What you experienced, young Zephyrian, was love. It is an emotion that most species can only feel for their own kind, if they can feel it at all. But humans inspire it in others. Marcus sat down heavily on a nearby bench. This was all too much to understand. So what happens now? Do I go back to the ship? Dr. Veltar and Lyra exchanged a look that Marcus did not like. There is something else you need to know, Dr. Veltar said carefully. The quantum fragments that hit you, they did not just hurt you. They changed you. You are no longer entirely human. Marcus looked down at his hands again, at the lines of light running under his skin. What do you mean? The quantum energy has bonded with your DNA in ways we do not fully understand, Dr. Veltar explained. You can now perceive and manipulate quantum probability streams. You can see the different ways reality might unfold and influence which possibility becomes real. As if to prove the point, Marcus suddenly became aware of something he had not noticed before. He could see faint lines of light connecting everything around him, showing him how each moment could lead to different futures. It was like being able to see time itself. This is impossible, he whispered. Yes, Dr. Veltar agreed, but you are alive, which was also impossible. And your survival may be the key to saving entire civilizations. Marcus looked at Lyra, who was watching him with an expression he could not read. Her crystal skin was cycling through colors rapidly, which he had never seen before. "There is more, is there not?" he asked. Lyra nodded slowly. "My people are dying, Marcus. Our homeworld is being destroyed by quantum radiation, and our biology makes us vulnerable to the same forces that changed you. But your survival has shown us something new." Dr. Veltar's lights pulsed with excitement. "Human genetic structure appears to have a unique compatibility with quantum energies. You may be the key to saving the Zephyrian species." Marcus closed his eyes and tried to absorb everything he had learned. He was on a secret space station. He had been changed by impossible forces, and now the fate of an entire alien species might depend on him. When he opened his eyes, he saw Lyra watching him with an expression of hope and fear. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. Over the next few days, Marcus learned things about the galaxy that changed everything he thought he knew about life among the stars. Dr. Veltar introduced him to other members of the Galactic Preservation Coalition, and each meeting left him more amazed and confused. There was Commander Zex, a being made of living metal, who commanded the Coalition's military forces. Her body could reshape itself into different forms, and she spoke in a voice that sounded like music played on steel drums. She had been watching human military tactics for years and was fascinated by humanity's willingness to accept casualties to protect civilian populations. Dr. Keth was an energy-based life form who existed partially in higher dimensions. He looked like a constantly shifting cloud of lights, and when he spoke, Marcus could hear his words in his mind rather than through his ears. Dr. Keth had been studying human psychology and was amazed by concepts like guilt, redemption, and self-sacrifice that were almost unknown in galactic civilization. But the most shocking introduction was to someone Marcus had not expected to see: Admiral Sarah Rodriguez, a human woman who had supposedly died in a transport accident 5 years earlier. "Surprised to see me, Marcus?" Admiral Rodriguez smiled as she entered the meeting room where Marcus was learning about coalition operations. "I had the same reaction when they recruited me." Marcus stared at her in disbelief. "But the newsfeed said your ship was destroyed by a spatial anomaly." "The newsfeeds were told what we needed them to be told," Admiral Rodriguez replied. "The truth is that my ship discovered something the galaxy was not ready to know about. We found evidence that someone was deliberately sabotaging first contact missions between humans and other species." She sat down across from Marcus and activated a holographic display that showed star maps and incident reports. "For the past 30 years, there have been over 200 accidents during human-alien cooperation projects. Ships destroyed, colonies attacked, research stations sabotaged. The pattern was so subtle that no one noticed it until we started looking specifically for it." Marcus studied the data, and even with his limited understanding, he could see what she meant. Every time humans started working closely with an alien species, something went wrong. Equipment failures, communication breakdowns, natural disasters that seemed too convenient to be coincidental. "Who would do this?" Marcus asked. "And why?" Dr. Veltar's lights shifted to an angry red pattern. "They call themselves the Purity Front. They are a coalition of species who believe that genetic mixing between different races will weaken the galaxy's evolutionary development." "Commander." Shex's metal body made grinding sounds that Marcus realized was her way of expressing disgust. "They believe that each species should remain separate and pure. They see human influence on other species as a form of contamination." "But that is insane," Marcus said. "Cooperation between species has led to incredible advances in science and technology, which is exactly why they want to stop it," Admiral Rodriguez replied. "The Purity Front is not interested in progress. They want to maintain the status quo, where each species stays in its own territory and develops along its own predetermined path." Dr. Keth's lights pulsed with what Marcus was learning to recognize as concern. "What makes humans particularly dangerous to their philosophy is your species' unique ability to form emotional bonds with other races. Most species can cooperate with aliens, but they rarely develop genuine affection for them." Marcus thought about his relationship with Lyra and realized that Dr. Keth was right. Marcus did not just respect Lyra's intelligence or appreciate her contributions to their research. He genuinely cared about her as an individual, in a way that had nothing to do with her usefulness to humanity. "The explosion that nearly killed you was not an accident," Admiral Rodriguez said quietly. We have evidence that the Purity Front sabotaged the containment systems on your ship. They were trying to kill both you and Lyra to prevent your research from continuing. Marcus felt a cold anger growing in his chest. They tried to murder Lyra to stop us from working together? They have done much worse, Commander Zex replied. We have documented cases where they have destroyed entire colonies to prevent interspecies cooperation. They see a few thousand deaths as acceptable losses to preserve their vision of genetic purity. Dr. Veltar moved closer to Marcus, and the lights under his bark skin shifted to a pattern of sympathy. But their attack on you has backfired in ways they could never have predicted. Your survival has revealed something that changes everything. The holographic display changed to show detailed scans of Marcus's body. He could see the quantum energy patterns flowing through his nervous system, creating new neural pathways and enhancing his brain's processing capabilities. The quantum fragments that should have killed you have instead bonded with your human DNA in a completely unprecedented way, Dr. Keth explained. You now have the ability to perceive and manipulate quantum probability streams. In simple terms, you can see the different ways the future might unfold and influence which possibility becomes reality. Marcus had been slowly becoming aware of this new ability over the past few days. He could sense the choices people were about to make before they made them, and he was starting to understand that he could somehow encourage certain outcomes over others. This is incredible, Admiral Rodriguez said, but it is not the most important discovery. Dr. Veltar, show him the Zephyrian data. The display changed again, and Marcus saw images of Lyra's homeworld. It was beautiful, with crystal cities that grew like forests and oceans that sparkled with bioluminescent life. But overlaid on the images were radiation readings that made Marcus's heart sink. Zephyr Prime is dying, Dr. Veltar explained. Quantum radiation from an unstable star is slowly poisoning the planet. The Zephyrian biology, which is based on crystalline structures, is extremely vulnerable to this type of radiation. They have perhaps 50 years before their entire species will be extinct. Marcus stared at the data in horror. Can they not evacuate? Move to other worlds? Zephyrians can only survive on worlds with very specific conditions, Dr. Keth replied. Their crystalline biology requires precise mineral compositions and energy fields that are extremely rare. We have found only 3 other worlds in the galaxy that could support them, and all 3 are already occupied by other species who will not share. But there is hope, Dr. Veltar continued. Your survival has shown us something remarkable. Human genetic structure appears to have a unique compatibility with quantum energies. The same forces that are killing the Zephyrians have made you stronger. Admiral Rodriguez leaned forward. We believe that human DNA contains sequences that could be used to develop treatments for quantum radiation exposure, not just for Zephyrians, but for any species vulnerable to these forces. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. You want to use my blood to create some kind of medicine? It is more complex than that, Dr. Veltar replied. We would need to study your genetic changes in detail and develop treatments based on what we learn. But yes, your transformed biology could be the key to saving millions of lives. The room fell silent as Marcus absorbed this information. He thought about Lyra, about her people dying slowly on a poisoned world. He thought about the Purity Front, trying to prevent different species from helping each other. He thought about his own transformation, the strange new abilities he was still discovering. There is something else you need to know, Admiral Rodriguez said gently. The process of developing these treatments would require significant changes to your biology. You would need to undergo procedures that would make you even less human than you already are. Marcus looked down at his hands, at the lines of quantum energy flowing under his skin. How much less human? Dr. Keth's lights pulsed uncertainly. We do not know. The procedures are experimental, and we cannot predict all the effects. You might retain your human consciousness and personality, or you might become something entirely new. What you would become, Commander Jax added, would be unprecedented in galactic history, a being capable of bridging the gap between species in ways that have never been possible before. Marcus stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the Coalition fleet. Ships from dozens of different species were working together, sharing technology and knowledge in ways that the Purity Front claimed were impossible. If I do this, he said quietly, if I let you change me even more, what happens to humanity? Do I stop being human and become something else? That is the question we cannot answer, Admiral Rodriguez replied. You would be pioneering a completely new form of existence. You would still have your memories, your personality, your core identity, but you would also have capabilities that no human has ever possessed. Marcus thought about the choice he was facing. He could refuse the procedures and remain mostly human, but that would mean watching Lyra's species die. Or he could accept the transformation and become something new, something that might be able to save millions of lives. As he considered his options, Marcus became aware of his quantum perception, showing him the possible futures branching out from this moment. In some timelines, he refused and lived a quiet life while civilizations fell. The decision to undergo the transformation was easier to make than to live with. Over the following weeks, as Dr. Veltar and his team prepared for the experimental procedures, Marcus found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about identity, humanity, and sacrifice. Lyra spent most of her time with him, and Marcus could see that she was struggling with her own emotions. Her crystal skin changed colors more frequently now, cycling through patterns that she claimed even she did not understand. "I do not want you to do this for me," she said one evening, as they sat in the station's observation deck, watching the stars. "My people have lived for thousands of years. If our time is ending, perhaps that is simply the natural order of things." Marcus looked at her, surprised by the sadness in her voice. "You do not really believe that." Lyra's skin shifted to a deep purple color that Marcus had learned meant she was feeling multiple conflicting emotions at once. "I have been reading about human philosophy and religion. You have concepts like martyrdom and heroic sacrifice that my people do not understand. We value logic and survival above all else. But you are here arguing against your own survival," Marcus pointed out. "That does not sound very logical." "That is what frightens me," Lyra replied. "Since the accident, since you saved me, I have been feeling things that Zephyrians are not supposed to be capable of. Gratitude, loyalty, affection." She paused, and her skin turned a soft pink color. "Love. These emotions are changing me, and I do not know if that is good or bad." Marcus reached over and carefully took her hand. Her crystal skin was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with its own inner light. Maybe change is not always bad. Maybe it is how we grow into something better. Before Lyra could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed, and the computer's voice echoed through the corridors. "All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill." Marcus and Lyra ran to the command center where they found chaos. Admiral Rodriguez was coordinating with ship captains on multiple screens, while Commander Jex was directing defensive preparations. Dr. Veltar was analyzing incoming data streams, his barkskin lights flashing in urgent patterns. "What is happening?" Marcus asked. "The Purity Front has found us," Admiral Rodriguez replied without looking away from her screens. "A fleet of 12 ships just dropped out of hyperspace and demanded that we surrender you and all Coalition research data." Marcus felt his new quantum perception kick in automatically. He could see the branching possibilities spreading out from this moment, and most of them ended badly. How did they find the Nexus? Commander Zex turned from her tactical displays, her metal body shifting into a more combat-ready configuration. "We believe they have been tracking the quantum signature from your transformation. Your unique energy pattern is unlike anything in the galaxy, and apparently it can be detected across vast distances." Dr. Veltar's lights shifted to an alarmed yellow pattern. "Marcus, we need to move you to the shielded laboratory immediately. If the Purity Front captures you, they will either kill you or use your abilities for their own purposes." But Marcus was not listening. His quantum perception was showing him something that made his blood run cold. The Purity Front was not just here to capture him. They were planning to destroy the entire Nexus to prevent the Coalition's research from continuing. "They are not here to negotiate," Marcus said quietly. "They are going to attack regardless of what we do." Admiral Rodriguez finally looked at him, and he could see the fear in her eyes. "How do you know that?" Marcus concentrated on his quantum abilities, trying to see further into the possible futures. "I can see their intentions. Their leader, someone called the Purifier, has decided that the Coalition is too dangerous to be allowed to exist. They plan to destroy this station and everyone on it." The tactical displays confirmed Marcus's perception. The Purity Front ships were moving into attack formation, their weapons charging. There was no communication, no attempt at negotiation. "All ships prepare for combat," Admiral Rodriguez ordered. "Activate all defensive systems." Marcus watched the preparation for battle and felt a strange calm settling over him. His quantum perception was showing him all the possible outcomes of the coming fight, and he did not like what he saw. The Coalition had good ships and brave crews, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. "There is another option," he said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him, and Marcus could see hope and fear in their expressions. "I could surrender myself to them," Marcus continued. "If they have what they came for, they might leave the station alone." "Absolutely not," Lyra said immediately. Her crystal skin had turned bright red, which Marcus had never seen before. "I will not let you sacrifice yourself again." Admiral Rodriguez shook her head. "Even if they took you and left, Marcus, they would eventually come back for the rest of us. The Purity Front does not compromise or negotiate. They eliminate threats." Commander Zex's metal body made grinding sounds of agreement. "The Purifier believes that any cooperation between species is a contamination that must be cleansed. He will not stop until all mixed species organizations are destroyed." Marcus closed his eyes and let his quantum perception expand as far as it could reach. He could see the battle about to begin, the ships that would be destroyed, the lives that would be lost. But he could also see something else, a possibility that was so unlikely it almost seemed like a dream. "There is a third option," he said slowly, "but it would require me to use abilities I do not fully understand yet." Dr. Veltar moved closer, his lights pulsing with curiosity and concern. "What kind of abilities?" Marcus opened his eyes and looked at each of them in turn. "I can manipulate quantum probability streams. That means I can influence which possible future becomes reality. If I concentrate hard enough, I might be able to affect the Purity Front ships directly." "That sounds incredibly dangerous," Admiral Rodriguez said. "You have only had these abilities for a few weeks. Trying to use them on such a large scale could kill you." "Or worse," Dr. Keth added, his energy form flickering with worry. "You could tear holes in reality itself, creating the same kind of quantum instability that nearly killed you in the first place." Marcus nodded. "I know the risks, but I can see what happens if we fight conventionally. The Coalition loses. The Nexus is destroyed. Everyone dies." Lyra grabbed his arm, her crystal skin now cycling rapidly between red and purple. "Marcus, please. There has to be another way." Marcus looked at her and felt his heart break a little. He could see in her eyes that she knew what he was planning to do. She understood that he was about to make another sacrifice, potentially the ultimate one. "I am sorry, Lyra," he said gently, "but this is who I am. This is what humans do." Before anyone could stop him, Marcus ran from the command center toward the station's outer hull. He could hear the others calling after him, but he did not slow down. His quantum perception was showing him exactly where he needed to be and exactly what he needed to do. He reached an observation port that looked out directly at the Purity Front fleet and pressed his hands against the transparent metal. The ships were beautiful in their own way, sleek and deadly, representing the peak of several species' military technology. Marcus closed his eyes and reached out with his quantum abilities, feeling for the probability streams that surrounded the enemy fleet. It was like trying to grab hold of lightning with his bare hands. The quantum forces were vast and chaotic, and trying to control them felt like trying to stop an avalanche by shouting at it. But Marcus had something the Purity Front did not expect: human stubbornness. He refused to give up, even as the quantum energies began tearing at his consciousness. He focused on a single, simple goal: making the Purity Front ships unable to attack. He did not try to destroy them or harm the crews. Instead, he reached into the quantum foundation of their weapon systems and simply made it impossible for them to function. He convinced reality that their guns could not fire, their missiles could not launch, their shields could not activate. The effort was enormous. Marcus felt like his mind was being stretched across impossible distances, torn apart by forces beyond human comprehension. But he held on, pouring every bit of his will into the task. Through the observation port, he could see the Purity Front ships suddenly losing power. Their formation broke apart as their engines failed and their weapon ports went dark one by one. Marcus collapsed to the floor, blood streaming from his nose and ears. His quantum perception was going wild, showing him thousands of possible futures all at once. He could feel his consciousness fragmenting, spreading across multiple dimensions, but he had done it. The Purity Front was helpless and the Nexus was safe. As darkness closed in around him, Marcus heard Lyra calling his name. He tried to answer, but his voice no longer seemed to belong to him. He had saved them all, but he was not sure if there was enough of Marcus Chen left to appreciate the victory. Marcus woke up for the second time in his life, not knowing if he was still human. This time, however, the question felt different. He was not concerned about what he had lost, but curious about what he had become. The medical bay looked the same as before, but Marcus could perceive it in ways that went beyond normal sight. He could see the quantum threads that connected every atom, the probability clouds that surrounded each possible interaction, the timeline branches that spread out from every moment. Most remarkably, he still felt like himself. He was still Marcus Chen, the engineer who worried about his friends and wanted to help people. But now he was also something more. "You are awake," Dr. Veltar said, approaching his bed. The alien doctor's bark skin was glowing with a pattern Marcus had never seen before, something that looked like pure amazement. "We were not certain you would survive the quantum backlash from what you did." Marcus sat up carefully, testing his body's responses. Everything worked, but it all felt enhanced somehow. His muscles were stronger, his reflexes faster, his mind clearer. "How long was I unconscious this time?" "Only 3 days," Dr. Veltar replied. But in those 3 days, the galaxy has changed dramatically. Before Marcus could ask what he meant, Lyra rushed into the room. Her crystal skin was cycling through colors so rapidly that it looked like a rainbow, and when she saw that Marcus was awake, she made a sound of pure joy that seemed to ring in harmonies. "Marcus, you are all right." She stopped just short of hugging him, suddenly uncertain. "You are still you, are you not?" Marcus smiled at her, and he was relieved to find that his emotions were unchanged. He still cared about Lyra, still felt the same warm affection when he looked at her. "I am still me, Lyra, just more me than before." Admiral Rodriguez entered the room next, followed by Commander Jex and Dr. Keth. All of them were looking at Marcus with expressions that mixed relief, curiosity, and something that might have been awe. "What you did to the Purity Front Fleet," Admiral Rodriguez said slowly, "was beyond anything we thought possible. You disabled 12 warships simultaneously without harming a single crew member. You reached across space and rewrote the fundamental properties of their technology." Marcus nodded, remembering the effort it had taken. "I could see all the quantum possibilities surrounding their ships. I just encouraged the reality where their weapons did not work." "Just encouraged reality," Commander Jex repeated, her metal body shifting into what Marcus was learning to recognize as amazement. "You speak about rewriting the laws of physics like it is a simple thing." Dr. Keth's energy form pulsed with excitement. "But that is not the most significant development. Show him the data, Dr. Veltar." Dr. Veltar activated a holographic display that showed Marcus's quantum signature before and after his latest transformation. The difference was dramatic. Where before the quantum energy had been chaotic and barely controlled, now it flowed in perfect harmony with his biological systems. "When you used your abilities to stop the Purity Front," Dr. Veltar explained, "something unprecedented happened. Instead of damaging you further, the quantum energies actually stabilized. You have achieved perfect quantum biological integration." Marcus studied the display, trying to understand what this meant. "Is that good or bad?" "It is miraculous," Dr. Veltar replied. "Your genetic structure has evolved to not just survive quantum exposure, but to thrive with it. You have become a living bridge between normal biology and quantum physics." Lyra moved closer to Marcus's bed, her skin settling into a warm golden color. "There is more, Marcus. While you were unconscious, Dr. Veltar used the data from your transformation to develop the treatment for my people." Marcus felt his heart leap with hope. "It worked?" Dr. Veltar's lights shifted to what Marcus now recognized as pure joy. "Better than we dared to hope. We were able to synthesize a treatment that will not only cure quantum radiation poisoning in Zephyrians, but will make them immune to it permanently. The first doses were delivered to Zephyr Prime yesterday. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. You saved them. All of them. We saved them," Lyra corrected gently. "Your sacrifice made it possible." Admiral Rodriguez stepped forward. "But that is not all, Marcus. Your transformation has opened up possibilities we never imagined. With your quantum signature as a template, we believe we can develop similar treatments for other species vulnerable to exotic radiation. You could be the key to protecting millions of beings across the galaxy." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the scope of what they were telling him. But I'm not a doctor or a scientist. How can I help with that? Dr. Keth's lights pulsed with something that looked like humor. You would not be working alone. The coalition is proposing something that has never been attempted before. A permanent research institute dedicated to developing quantum biological integration techniques. The Human-Alien Integration Institute, Commander Zex added, with you as its first quantum ambassador. Marcus looked around at all of them, trying to process this information. Quantum ambassador? You would be the first being in galactic history capable of safely interfacing with multiple alien biologies, Dr. Veltar explained. Your quantum abilities would allow you to help other species adapt to forces that would normally kill them. Lyra's skin brightened with excitement. Marcus, you could help species that have never been able to work together before. You could make cooperation possible between beings that are so different they cannot even breathe the same air. The scope of the opportunity was staggering. Marcus could see it with his quantum perception. Vast networks of cooperation spreading across the galaxy. Species sharing knowledge and resources in ways that had never been possible before. There is one more thing, Admiral Rodriguez said quietly. The Purity Front has not given up. Our intelligence suggests they are regrouping and planning a much larger offensive. They see what you represent as an existential threat to their philosophy. Marcus nodded. He had expected this. Because I prove that cooperation between species makes everyone stronger, not weaker. Exactly, Commander Zex replied. They will not stop until either you are dead or their movement is completely defeated. Marcus stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the Coalition fleet. More ships had arrived while he was unconscious, representing species he was only beginning to learn about. The sight filled him with a sense of purpose he had never felt before. Then we had better make sure they fail, he said quietly. Over the following weeks, the Human-Alien Integration Institute became a reality. Marcus worked with Dr. Veltar and dozens of other scientists to develop new quantum biological techniques. The process was challenging and sometimes dangerous, but Marcus's abilities continued to grow stronger and more refined. The first major success came when they helped a silicon-based species called the Korthak overcome their vulnerability to water-based environments. Using quantum manipulation, Marcus was able to modify their crystalline structure so they could work alongside water-breathing species for the first time in their history. Next came the Ethereal Collective, beings of pure energy, who had never been able to interact physically with solid matter. Marcus developed a quantum interface that allowed them to temporarily take solid form while retaining their energy-based consciousness. With each success, more species joined the coalition. The Purity Front's attacks became more desperate and violent, but they also became less effective. It was hard to argue that cooperation between species was dangerous when the evidence of its benefits was spreading across the galaxy. Marcus found himself changing in ways beyond the physical. His consciousness seemed to expand with each new species he helped, giving him insights into forms of existence he had never imagined. Yet somehow his core identity remained unchanged. He was still the engineer who had thrown himself in front of quantum fragments to save an alien girl. The transformation was complete 6 months later, when Marcus successfully helped two species that had been at war for centuries develop the ability to share consciousness temporarily. For the first time in galactic history, beings from different species could literally understand each other's thoughts and feelings. As Marcus watched representatives from dozens of species working together in the Institute's laboratories, he reflected on how far he had come from that moment in the research lab when everything had gone wrong. He was no longer entirely human, but he had never felt more human than he did now. The qualities that made humanity special, compassion, self-sacrifice, the willingness to help others even at great personal cost, had not been diminished by his transformation. They had been amplified and shared across the galaxy. Lyra approached him as he stood watching the latest group of species learning to work together. Her crystal skin was a steady, warm blue. The color Marcus had learned meant she was perfectly content. "Do you ever regret what you have become?" she asked softly. Marcus considered the question seriously. He thought about everything he had gained and lost, about the human life he might have lived and the galactic future he was helping to create. "No," he said finally. "I think this is what I was meant to become. This is what humans are meant to do, help others become more than they thought possible." Lyra smiled and her skin brightened with happiness.